You're listening to the Messengers of Hope Mission podcast with your host, Bob Gardner.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Glistening Glass. Glistening Glass is my company and is a residential window washing and gutter cleaning company. We service the northern Hillsborough and southwest Pasco County area. If you're interested in having your home windows or gutters cleaned, now is the time to call 813-404-2300. That's Glistening Glass. The number one question I get about Messengers of Hope is, how did we start a food pantry? Now, most people know we started out by bringing bagged lunches out to the homeless, but jumping from bagged lunches to a food pantry is a really big deal. And I get this question a lot. And if you've heard the story, you'll probably enjoy it, because whenever I share this story and I go back to a group or a club or a church, they want to hear the story again, and they want other people to hear the story. So today, I'm going to break it down. This is what I lovingly call the banana story. Now, the banana story starts back in 2014. Messenger Hope Mission, we started making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in our kitchen, making about 12 bags a week and going out and bringing food to the homeless. And we'd have to find the homeless each week. We had a little bit of trouble at first because we didn't know where to look. We just knew that this was something on our hearts to do, that we had to give this food out to the homeless. And as I said, we would bring out about 12 bags a week, and it took us about an hour with the drive to and fro. And, then, of course, we made the food usually the day before. Well, it didn't take long. It took just a few weeks to go from 12 bags to 20 bags. And then a couple of weeks more, we went from 20 bags to 40 bags. Within the first 6 months, we were from 40 bags up to about 100 to 120 bags. And by the end of our first year, we were doing about 150 bags per week. Now, this is just the homeless. And what we did was we drive to different areas in Pasco County. We drive up and down Little Road, up and down US 19, and of course, the roads that travel back and forth between 19 and Little Road. And we'd stop and we'd give food to the homeless or the paper sellers as we saw them. And people don't realize, but the paper sellers, most of them are actually homeless or very low income. So we'd bring these bagged lunches to them, and this would save them from having to spend their hard-earned money from the paper selling. Now, papers were, I believe, $1.50 at the time. So the paper sellers made 50 cents per paper, and that was it. Earlier, I said this had been going on for just about a year or more. It actually been slightly less than a year that we'd been doing this, when finally things came to a head, and Pasco had put a panhandling ban into effect. Now, it did two things. It would trespass you for panhandling, and you also couldn't solicit on the side of the road. That also meant like places like the fire department and the police could not solicit for their fundraisers. Like the fire department has a Fill the Boot fundraiser. They couldn't do that anymore. It became illegal to be able to panhandle or to solicit on the side of the road. So all of a sudden, we were going out one week, giving out 150 or more bags of food. And then the next week we went out and we had a hard time finding anybody. I think we found about 10 or 12. So we were at a loss as what to do. And we spent the next couple weeks trying to figure things out. We had gotten calls from different places saying that we could come to their parking lot. Different churches or businesses said the homeless hang out near them or by them or in their parking lots, and that we could bring them food. So we started doing that. We set up 3 different locations that we could go to. The first location was in Hudson, and we had about 100 people showing up. The second one was in Port Richey, where we had about 40 to 50 people showing up. And the last one was in Holiday, where we had anywhere between 5 to 10 people showing up. So again, we were roughly right around 150 bags that we were bringing out, bag lunches. And this went on for several weeks. And it was working pretty well. We thought, oh, this is great. This is gonna help, and make it easier for us, because on a Sunday when we're going up and down US 19 and Little Road, we were taking anywhere between 5 to 7 hours on a Sunday afternoon to do this. It was a really long commitment. It was long work. It was tiring. You were exhausted when you got done. And then we went down to this, where we're doing this in 2.5 hours, and we're not taking the risks of driving all over the place and getting out of the cars and walking up and down these major roads. We could just meet the homeless right where they're congregating, and that worked for quite a while. And then we had the threat of a tropical storm come into Pasco County. We didn't know it at the time because we'd been watching the weather, and the storm was threatening to come this way, but it had shifted. And we had planned to go out on that Sunday just as usual. However, what we didn't know, as I said earlier, was that because the storm was coming this way, they opened all the shelters. So the homeless that are normally on the street went to these shelters to get away from the storm that never showed up. It was a little bit of rain, is all. So we went out that week, and there was no homeless around. Interesting thing was that this particular week, I had a friend reach out to me. He was getting ready to have knee surgery, and he wanted to go and spend a little bit of time with me before he went in the hospital and had months and months of recovery. So he asked if he could go hang out with me on a Sunday and give out food to the homeless. And I said, absolutely, I would love to do that. And my friend, whose nickname was Big Man, came out with me. We actually took his car and we loaded up his the backseat of his car, like one of those big boats of a car, a 4-door, probably a Buick or something like that. And we had all the bag lunches in the back. And of course, we go to the first stop. And again, the shelters are open, which I didn't know about. We got there and there was about 5 people. And I was telling him there'd be like 100 people there. And I'm like, oh man, what's going on? Where is everybody? So we gave out a couple extra lunches to the people that were there. And then we headed on to the next stop, where usually, again, 40 to 50 people. We got there and there was 2 people there. And I was in full-on panic mode. We had 150 bag lunches to give out. And here we go, and we've given out, I don't know, 10 or 15 at this point, 10% of what we had. And I know that the last stop usually only has between 5 to 10 people. So I'm in a complete panic, and I'm thinking, here's my friend. The first time he's gone out with us, I've told him all these amazing stories, and no one's showing up. He's going to be thinking that, man, what are you doing with all this food? Why do you need all this food? There's no one here. And I was in a complete panic as we sat there at the second stop, and I'm thinking about what to do. And I just had no clue as to what we're going to do going to the next stop. So as we sat there in his car in the parking lot with really no homeless there, and we had waited for about a half an hour, I was just trying to figure out what I was going to do with this food. And there was no way it was going to hold to the next week, even though it was peanut butter and jelly and we could freeze it. It had already been frozen for a while and then brought out, and you don't want to refreeze it. So I was like, we got to find a place to give this food out. And very, very sheepishly, I said, hey, man, do you want some bag lunches? And he goes, man, I thought you'd never ask. Now, his family they lived in a lower income area. They were very generous with what they had, but they didn't have a lot. And this would be a big thing for them to be able to get extra food to save some money. And so I said, all right, let's swing by your house. It was really close. It was on the way to the third stop that we were doing. And we're driving there, and I said, hey, do you know of anybody else in your neighborhood that might need some bag lunches? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I got a neighbor across the street. She lost her husband last summer, and she's living on her own. And I'm pretty sure she can use some food. And my neighbor on one side of me, man, he's got 3 kids. His wife died last year, and I know he's struggling to make it. And there's a couple other people in my neighborhood I know that might need some food. And man, I'll reach out to them when we get there. And I'm like, this is perfect, And I said, I'm glad this worked out this way. So we're driving into his neighborhood, and as we're driving in, now it's a small area. It's 3-block radius. Really rundown homes. Most of them are rundown. There's a few homes that just derelict. Anyone that's in them is squatters. So we're driving to this neighborhood, and the very first house that we see in the neighborhood, there is a guy standing on the bumper of his pickup truck, leaning into the hood of his engine. It's one of those oversized pickup trucks, big wheels. So he is leaning in there working on his truck. And he has 4 young kids, I'd say anywhere between 5 to 10 years old, running around his pickup truck playing tag or something of that line. Now, I'm being generous when I say a front yard. The front yard consisted of dirt, rocks, and some weeds. And the house, I'm also being generous, it was a single wide trailer, and there was broken windows that were boarded up, and the front door was a carpet or a rug that had been nailed over the door, so that they could keep the heat and or cool in, if they even had AC. And we pull up, and I ask my friend, I said, "Do you know this guy?" And he goes, "No, I don't know him. He's in his neighborhood, but he doesn't know him." And I said, "Do you mind if we ask him if he wants some food?" I asked my friend this because, this is his neighborhood. I don't want to be offensive. And he goes, "Yeah, let's do that." So we pull up, and I roll down my window, and I call over to the guy. I said, "Hey, sir, we're out giving out bag lunches. Do you want some bag lunches for your family?" He lifts his head up out of the truck, and he looks at me in a stern way, and then puts his head back under the hood. And I thought, oh, okay, I've offended this guy. We better get out of here. And he looks up again, and he climbs down off the bumper, and he starts walking towards me, head down. Now, this is a pretty big guy, too. Head down, and his arms at his side, not moving back and forth, fists clenched. And he walks up to the window, and I'm thinking, this guy is going to grab me and pummel me. What business do you have telling me I need food for my family? And he walks up, and he looks at me, and there are tears flowing down his cheeks. And he says, "Mister, let me tell you something. About an hour ago, I walked up to the grocery store with my last $2, and I bought each of my kids a banana so that they could eat today. That's all the food they had. That's all the food we have in our house. Yeah, we want food." So I start handing this guy some bag lunches. And the little girl that I had seen playing tag, she had a banana in her hand, and she was licking a banana peel at the time. She comes over, and he hands her the bag lunch, and she says, "Daddy, what is this?" And the guy says, "Honey, that's a bag lunch. You can have lunch now." And she starts jumping up and down. "Yippee, yippee, we get to eat today. We get to eat today." And she goes running towards the house. "Mommy, mommy, we have food. We have food. We get to eat." And she goes running, and she pulls the blanket back, or the rug back, and she goes in. And about a minute later, this lady comes walking out on crutches right behind the little girl. And she comes up to the car, and understandably confused and a little bit angry. And the husband explains what we're doing, that we're giving out food, and that it's free. There's free of charge completely, and that they can have this stuff. And she starts crying, and the husband is crying, and I'm crying, and my friend in the front seat, big man, he's crying, and the kids are stuffing their face with food. And it was just a magical moment. Now, the wife then tells us that the husband had lost his job. He was seasonal work, and the season was over, and he had just lost his job, and he was looking for work, and that she had lost her job because she broke her leg while she was working. She was on the clock, and she broke her leg, and she had to go and get it set and a cast on, and she couldn't work during that time. Well, she was let go from her job for various reasons that they gave her, but it was directly related to a broken leg. And that's kind of frustrating in the first place. But she said that because of that, they lost their apartment that they were living in, and they had to move in with her parents. Now, if you remember correctly, I said there were 4 kids, a mother and a father, that's 6, and her parents, the grandmother and grandfather, all living in a single wide trailer. They were just so grateful that they had gotten this food. We drove down a ways further, another block over, to my friend's house, and he contacted everyone that he knew. By the time we left that neighborhood, we started out with about 140 bags. By the time we left that neighborhood, we had 5 bags left. There were that many people in need of food. We drove to our last stop, where as you remember, I said we usually had between 5 and 10 people show up. We had 5 people that week. We gave out all 150 bags of food that day in a way that we had no idea that this was going to happen. On the way home, I was so struck by this, so touched, so emotional over this. I couldn't wait to get home to tell my family what had happened. And I shared with them. And we decided that we needed to collect some food for these kids. And we were thinking like boxes of cereal, boxes of mac and cheese, maybe some ramen. And we would go there again the next week and we would give out bag lunches and this food. So that is what we did. And we started collecting this stuff on our Facebook page, which was very fledgling at the time. I think we had probably about 20, 30 followers. And we started collecting food, and people would ask us, hey, we have some canned vegetables. Do you want that too? Well, sure. Yeah, we'll take that. And oh man, we have some produce that's still good, but we're not going to eat it. Do you want it? So we started getting groceries in. And this went on week after week. We'd say, hey, if you've got any food that you can donate, any kind of shelf-stable, canned goods, whatever, we'll take it and we'll give it out in this neighborhood. So we had unknowingly switched from just a homeless ministry giving out food to the homeless to now a mobile food pantry. And over the course of the next several months, it just grew and grew and grew to where that neighborhood, we had 40, 50 homes showing up every week to get food, and they were so grateful for it. We even had a business reach out to us at Thanksgiving time, and they donated 26 turkeys and all the trimmings for the turkey, like full Thanksgiving meals, and we had just enough to give out in that neighborhood at that Thanksgiving, and that was Thanksgiving 2015. Well, there's a lot more to this story, and I will share that in a future episode of this podcast. But that, in a nutshell, is how we went from being a simple homeless ministry to where we eventually get. And as I said, I'll be sharing that in future episodes. But just think about that. How the course of everything changed because we were willing to do something out of the ordinary. We didn't want to stop what we were doing when something difficult came up. And I'm not patting ourselves on the back for this. I'm not saying that we've done anything special. We just did what we felt that we had to do. And when it got rough, we pushed through it and did it anyway. Well, I want to thank you for listening, and I will share more of this story. So please stay tuned, hit like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to this on, and look forward to the next part of the banana story and what Messengers of Hope started as and became. In this week's news for Messengers of Hope Mission, we'll be holding a Thanksgiving food drive November 12th, that's a Sunday, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. in Odessa at the Phi Delta Kappa Fraternity Banquet Hall. That's right off of State Route 54 next to Vallarta's Mexican restaurant. The great thing about the November food drive is if you donate a turkey or a ham or a $15 grocery store gift card, we'll give you a Messengers of Hope t-shirt for free. The food drive again will be November 12th from 11 to 2 p.m. Also, we have started our annual toy and gift drive for the holidays. We need new unwrapped gifts for children between the age of 0 and 17 years old. Please consider giving some gifts to Messenger Hope Mission for children whose families struggle even more at this time of the year. We'll also take used, good working, good condition, clean video game systems and video games to give out. Okay, everyone, this is the point of the podcast where I get to make an appeal to you, the listener. Messengers of Hope is in need of volunteers to come help work at our warehouse. We have jobs as easy as sorting food and toiletries, items like light cleaning, all the way up to lifting and stacking of boxes. If you live in the greater Tampa Bay area and want to serve with Messengers of Hope, reach out today. Go to our Facebook page and message us directly. If you're not local or do not have the ability to volunteer at Messengers of Hope Warehouse, you can still make an impact. Messengers of Hope is in need of financial gifts. Donations are tax deductible as Messengers of Hope is a registered 501c3 nonprofit. You can go to our Facebook page and find an online donation portal or get the address and mail us a check. Any amount helps more than you may think. That's going to do it for this week's Messengers of Hope Mission podcast. In the words of Mother Teresa, if you can't feed 100 people, feed just one. This is Bob Gardner reminding you to make a difference in our world today. See you next time right here on the Messengers of Hope Mission podcast.